Nau mai, haere mai. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. So much to get through today. We've seen the Crusaders finding their feet on attack. We've seen the Blues not quite getting there once again, but really being in the race. The Hurricanes get up over the Highlanders, who just couldn't finish it off. Six Nations, we'll have a look at that as well. France becoming champions. They're heading down to New Zealand soon, so we've got to break that down as well. Plenty to get through. Duplessis Kirifi and all of the number 7 choices. There's been so much conversation about Duplessis Kirifi over the last couple of weeks. We thought we'd get into some detail about what he's doing and what the other 7s are doing and how each one could suit the All Blacks and what the best fit is there. Goal kicking, is that a major issue in New Zealand rugby? Of course, your emails, and we'll get into the tipping and everything else that we normally do in the show. Of course, joined in studio by James Parsons, who's, you know, it's been a tough couple of weekends for you, but the smile never leaves.
No, well, there's some great code that's been played, so I do enjoy a bit of that. But yes, I would like to see a few more wins in the column for the Blues in coming weeks.
Just, they're close. Bryn Hall coming out of Japan from the Kubota Club. Got the sign in the background there, Brynner. Things going pretty good for you guys over there. What are you, sitting third and in a good place for the playoffs in a couple of months?
Yeah, we did finish quite well on the weekend, but I tell you what, we didn't start very well. I think we were down 22-0 in the first probably 45 minutes, and then Malcolm Marks, Chipper, he comes on and saves the day with a couple of our bomb squad members. It has been pretty good for us this year. So, no, good to get a win, but you're definitely a tough review for us this week. But yeah, we're sitting not too bad third and hopefully trying to get a top 2 finish so we can get the week off for a semi-final in a few weeks' time.
Don't worry, mate. Just put the team on Malcolm's back. He's got you. Top 2 all the way.
Having him as a teammate. He's actually my golf partner as well, Jipper. So we're actually getting a lot tighter. We've touched on Bernard Foley and our connection, but Malcolm Marks and I are actually starting to build a really nice connection on and off the field. So I'll be keeping that powder nice and dry for you, Big Jipper.
Does Malcolm Marks pound a big ball? I'm imagining he can hit a big ball.
Yeah, he's got a big ball when he connects, and he had an eagle and a birdie and a run of like 3 holes. So when he's on. Pretty much like his rugby. So yeah, it's good to have him as a partner as well.
I'm going to go get some coaching now though, because now I can see my golf. I'll start playing better golf, and I might. You may invite me. You might invite him to New Zealand. You invite me to one of your, prestigious courses that you're allowed to play for free on.
I'm working behind the scenes just for you, Jip. I know how much you enjoy Malcolm Marks, so that's my goal for this year, for us to be able to have a 4-way in terms of us being able to connect as a group, whether that's in New Zealand, South Africa, or Australia, or wherever it may be. I'm working hard for us, Jip.
Okay, let's get into the start of the show now. Let's start off with the Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centre turning point. Ashley and Martin treatment can be a big turning point for young men looking to regrow their hair. This time around, we're going to get into the Crusaders attack. So the first couple of weeks, we saw 8 tries from them, but in the last 2 weeks, we've seen 16 tries in 2 weeks. The attack is absolutely humming. Chip, what's changed there?
Their risk versus reward, they are really, and afternoon footy I think plays a part, but they are really looking on their attack to keep the ball alive. If you look at Will Jordan's try, when Saifaloy pops it out the back, it's almost like a no-look flick pass and Will goes on to score. I think that's the example of the Crusaders' attack, is everyone is just in sync with attack at all costs, and it feels like they feel they can score from anywhere. They have a high conversion rate, obviously, once they get in the 22, but it is a little bit more ambitious to what we saw of the 6-time champion Crusaders that once got into the 22 sort of rolled their sleeves up. They do chance their arm. Had a little interaction. I bumped into Wayne Smith on Friday, and it's great to see Wayne. Sorry, where are you? Smithy, great to have you as a fan of the show. Really made me do some proper homework, some real fine-tuning homework this week. But what Smithy said to me is, you guys are obsessed with kicking, which I must admit, when we look back on it, Bryn, we do like to exit, very, very well and quickly via the boot, whether it be a box kick or tactical kicking. But he opened up my thinking, and got to find a middle ground of attack at all costs, is they exited out of their area 100%, but their area turnover rate was at 18. But then when you look at where the errors are, it's actually in between the halfway and the 22. So it's almost like they've got a license to have a real crack in that part of the field. And if you are to turn over there, if you are to get a turnover, it's probably the best place to get a turnover because naturally teams will look to exit or kick the ball back to you and you can get back into your attacking structure. So they've got to, although their turnover count is high, what Smithy's saying that to me has made me think is don't get so fixated on the turnover, probably get fixated where the turnovers are happening. And where this Crusaders attack, I believe, is being the turning point, not only, I suppose, from last season, but for their season and to be wary of this mindset is it works for them because they're actually really disciplined within the areas they're obviously targeting to chance their arm versus not. And I think that's a big difference. Even when they run the ball out of the half for an exit, it's achieved as an exit tick. Do you know what I mean? So they're not always just kicking to exit, but they're making the best of the situation with the options that are presented to them. And yeah, as you've said, like their attack is on fire. And a lot of it is around the collisions as well. Obviously the clean outs, making deep rucks and that speed of ball. But I think they do have a licence, a much more bigger licence in between the 22 and halfway to have a crack in their phase play.
So is Wayne saying that actually exiting from your own half with ball in hand is a far better option than we thought it was?
He's saying it's a far better entertaining option in terms of, you know, there's more opportunities to run with the ball than just resorting to what we see as teams set up for the kick. And I think what he's saying is you can still be active and alive for an attacking opportunity, even if you're set to kick. But where I suppose there's blockers and there's protections and that you're just almost giving the ball back. When teams drop wingers back, some teams still go for the kick exit just because they want a clean exit. But there's actually opportunities, he's saying, if teams still set and paint a picture that they could do both.
Yeah, I think it was just always having a triple threat mindset. I think, you know, if you've kind of fallen into the trap of just wanting to kick in, players aren't animated outside in your attack shape, then it's pretty easy to defend. And then, you know, if you're all kind of engaged, then depending on what the picture is in terms of what's in front of you, you might see some space out wide. And they've shown some good form of the exits, whether they want to box kick off Preston, they want to kick long, or they've got an ability to be able to play to the edge or being able to play through the middle of the field from what they see. So I think with their attack structure, more so in the exit zone, is that they're all available. They're all seeing what's in front of them. And so I think probably last year, it didn't look like they were very clear in terms of how they wanted to exit or just in general, really, around their phase play strikes. So whether that's Brad Moore coming in or James Marshall having more time in the attack and seeing what's around them, it's a lot better. But I think you just can't underestimate the cattle that's there as well. I think having David Hart-Vili back, we've talked around him a lot, and I've played with him a lot in terms of what he gives in front of you and being able to give confidence to your 9 and 10s or the guys who are in the middle of the field, that he's behind that pivot to see where the space is, there's an opportunity. And having Will Jordan back on the edge, that's another form of, I guess, communication, another pair of eyes that are seeing where the space is, whether that's through run, pass or attacking kits as well. And I actually thought Braden Ennor coming back after a big injury was really good in terms of his decision making, whether it was being able to use his speed running the ball or even his distribution skills. Look, you don't score, I don't know how many tries they scored between the back three, but 9 or 8 tries. And I found the distribution from the second 5 and centre to get that ball to the space was really good on the weekend. So whether they missed that last year and weren't able to get the ball to the edge, but I guess for me, I pause in terms of being able to give them too much credit because when they did play the Chiefs, they weren't, I guess, as crucial, I guess as ruthless as they were the last 2 weeks. So I guess the challenge for them is when they do play a derby game against the Chiefs or the Blues this weekend, which they will find probably a lot more difficult to try and use that attacking, that attacking ability and having that ball in hand of the numbers that we had, 1,000 metres carried. I think they will be challenged a little bit more in that sense with the Blues Blues defence. But all in all, I think the guys that I have touched on that have come back have really helped them to be able to have that triple threat of being able to run, pass, kick. And I guess with what's seen in front of them and the picture that's given to them, they're choosing the right option because they're pretty clear in terms of what they're seeing defensively from other teams.
I think a lot of, you can see their mindset and everything is to get the ball back though. So they had the highest amount of restarts regathered, but they go for it. So potentially going for short ones doesn't necessarily always end in a great position for you as the team, but they back themselves to get that ball back. And I think you've got to credit Sevu Reece and Macca Springer. one, their ability to kick from the edge. So you've actually got trust that we can get to the edge, and we know Sevu can go off his right foot. We saw Macca do something absolutely outrageous with his left foot and scored a try from it. But I think that's what we're seeing more of, is they have a lick first and then have that ability to bail out if they're going, because if you do get isolated on those edges, you can get turned over a lot. And so I do think actually the skill set execution of Sevu and Macca was pinpoint, and it was the same the week before. And then just having an understanding that there will be more turnovers when your carry to pass ratio, they're at 67%, so they're passing a lot more. They're the most passes to carry ratio in the competition the last 2 weeks. Against the Chiefs, it wasn't that way, and I do feel like that Reds game has been a big turning point for them, and now they've backed it up. You almost think they'll have a real sense of confidence coming into this derby game, that they know where their strengths are, and probably more focused on what they can bring to the encounter, rather than, it just seems like they're very methodical about internally looking at their setup and what they can control versus so much what the opposition can do.
Brenna, another interesting part of the Crusaders attack that was there is like the way that they hold their width, that kind of allows the midfield breaks as well. Like we saw Macca Springer, I think, a lot. He is out by the touchline. Even that try where he got the ball late, he was running outside of the touchline before he came in to receive the pass. How vital is that element of the attack, again, to show those options, to create the ability for everyone to do it?
Yeah, 100%. I think, if whether you're a winger or you're a loose footer or hooker, and you've got someone in that 5 metre line, you've always, as a last defender on that edge, you've got to think about the attacking kick, or, if it's a second pivot that gets that ball, it's a bridge pass. So it kind of opens up the space in terms of that defensive pressure that the team can put on you. So, and then like I said before, when you've got good distribution, 12 and 13, that can get that ball to the space, even if you have your skill set under pressure, you can get that ball there. So, yeah, I just think a lot of those guys, whether it's, Macca Springer, Sebu Reece, or sometimes you see a loose forward that's on the edge, it just seems like they're all in rhythm in terms of where they need to be on the field. And I think last year there was just one thing they didn't get right. There was a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes that they weren't getting right in terms of their face play shape. The clunkiness was a word that we used last year. But I think sometimes when you have the cattle that has come back, and it was probably one thing that we touched on last year, a lot of young men getting opportunities but probably didn't have that experience of what it was to play regularly at the Super Rugby level. Getting those guys that have come back, you can kind of just see how much they miss them in terms of not only the execution, but probably the confidence that they give that group, in terms of the communication that they give, the ability of being able to get the execution right in crucial times under pressure. So I think it's been a great start for the Crusaders. And like you touched on with Macca Springer being on the edge, it just makes the decision-making for the defensive side a lot harder when you've got guys that are in the 5 metre line, or even the animation, having guys out the back, all in sync, which we've probably seen the last 2 weeks against the Reds and the Force.
But I think, to answer your question, it's actually the work that's done in that midfield that makes the defenders worry about the guy on the edge, because every team, it's basically a fine if someone's not in the 5 metre channel in terms of attack structure, well, in New Zealand anyway, to draw the perceived width of attack. But because there's so many moving parts in here, if you're a carry clean side, currently under the speed of the ball and the gain line accuracy, under the sort of the new rules that have had this impact, is you can sort of come up and you can back yourself to get to you can sort of quarter flag it, but when there's so many moving parts, you can't actually back yourself to get right up in that passing channel to either cut that off, or the bridge pass, which buys you time to get back. So that's the challenge for the last 2 weeks for the Crusaders, because there's so many moving parts in that middle bit of the field. Defenders aren't getting that line speed to get in that passing channel to spook them, and then that edge is really open up, or they're more worried about the edge, and a Will Jordan or a Dave Havili or a Kemera can really sort of pop out the back, as we saw Richie do so well, and split that sort of edge defender of the forward pods. So I think it's all working into one. That role will definitely happen for width, but I do think it's all these moving parts that are just making defenders hesitant, and you can't present that I suppose that fear factor of line speed at the moment.
Geez, we've talked them up now. That's the Crusaders. They're probably gone this week based off the fact that we've
talked up their attack. They won't be happy with the amount of points they've leaked defensively, but their attack definitely is. Yeah, it's pretty, you can't ignore it.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
The points are on the board.
They are. The Chiefs' points on the board too against the Blues. 5.3 points per entry into the 22. So they got there 6 times, and each time they scored a try, basically.
Yeah, well, they got the 4 tries and then they won 3 penalties. So out of the 7 entries, I think they got 6 out of 7. But it was actually 100%. I know the stats say 86% because one of the pens didn't equate to points. But 7 entries, 4 tries, 3 penalties won. That's the efficiency you're looking for, because statistically you'd look at it and the Blues should have won convincingly in terms of the opportunity that they had. And I mean, the Blues still scored 5 tries. They had the 8 entries, but led to 2 turnovers of their own and 1 kick that didn't go to hand, which led to a turnover. So 5 out of 8 is still pretty efficient, but it just shows the fine margins and that accuracy when you get in that attacking area. You sort of have to come away with points with the impact of the rules being sort of aiding scoring points. You know, like they're all sort of high scoring. It's not like going to be ever an 18-6 at the moment in Super Rugby. You are going to leak some points, so you've got to make sure that you, I suppose, make every post a winner. And I think that was the defining moment. You know, pretty evenly matched game. Chiefs fought hard. Blues were a hell of a lot better. Came down to a conversion. And I think that's what I like, is like both styles are enjoyable when there's that closeness and that intensity and maybe not that free-flowing. And then obviously with the free-flowing, it's enjoyable as well. And it just shows some games and conditions, you've just got to make sure that I suppose the benefit outweighs the cost sometimes, and a couple of times, the Blues chanced their arm with fast ball, and it led to turnovers, which didn't allow them to make as much punch as the opportunities they created. But they were remarkably better. And just to go on the theme of the carry to pass around the Blues, it was 0.99, so most of the time they were just looking to carry in around those collision areas, which I think you need to do against the Chiefs. That's an area you need to really dominate and win, and then allow that space to be created elsewhere.
Both teams look very desperate, and I think considering where the Blues are probably sitting at the moment, I felt that they looked desperate, and they played actually a really good brand of footy, and it was, like you said, Jip, a couple of moments here and there that the Chiefs really got the better of the margin of errors was so small, and it was actually a high quality game, especially ball and play as well. It was a very high ball and play kind of game as well. But I think what I really enjoyed seeing from the Blues was actually the evolution of where their attack's gone. Now, we know last year they went through the front door in terms of teams where there was pick and goes, being able to go through the middle, and that collision era, I thought they did really well in terms of being able to tighten up the Chiefs. And they scored 3 tries, I thought, getting the ball to the edge. So, like, we know that they want to go through the front door and they still have that in their DNA. But I think the way they were able to get that ball to the edge for, Mark Talaire's try, AJ Lamb's try, and even Coy Evans' try, they were able to get that ball to the edge. So I think it's not all doom and gloom for the Blues. I know on the table it's a little bit disappointing, and they're going to have to try get a few wins in the next couple of weeks. But I really enjoyed the way that they did play in terms of their attacking ability to get that ball to the edge and being able to, I guess, evolve from that brutality force that we saw last year and evolving to be able to score tries on the edge. So very small margins, I thought, that game. I thought the bench of the Chiefs, which has probably been their difference, I think, this year. I think they have the most points in terms of the bench coming on the last 20 minutes. And, when you've got guys like Finau, Cortez and Artemia, who I thought did really well, and it's having that 1-2 combination with Xavier Rowe, it's putting them in really good positions in terms of game management when Cortez and Artemia came on with his attacking kicks, and I think also his ability to get the box kick right as well. So, I know it's tough for the Blues in terms of where they are on the table, but Jeb, I was pretty impressed. I thought they weren't playing like they were on the ladder, I thought.
Yeah, to me it just looked like they simplified the game plan and they just committed to it, stuck to it. And I agree. I just think the decision-making was so much better in terms of attack. And, statistically, it was their best performance of the year. And I felt like it probably was their best performance of the year. And they put themselves in a position to win and didn't. But when I say, I'll give you some stats just so you can see. So in a Dewey game, like 900 metres run an attack, that's quite high compared to 504 for the Chiefs. 9 line breaks, 72% gain line, 16 turnovers. Probably, they would want a little bit less in terms of where those turnovers were versus what we were saying about the Crusaders. 89% defence, only 10 penalties given away. Back to 100% at set piece, which I mentioned last week was crucial for them. And then obviously their ability under the high ball, they turned around. So, yeah, I think, and 76% was lightning quick ball. That's pretty high when you're over the gain line 72% of the time, and then it's lightning quick ball 76% of the time. You're putting yourself well and truly in the contest to score points, a lot of points. And I think they would have grown a lot of confidence, and this, should hopefully put them back on track to believe that they do have the game plan to still win this competition.
Now, I'd like you to bear with me because I'm about to draw quite a long bow. Last night on the breakdown, we had Jeff Wilson talking about the kick to the corner to Rieko Ioane and whether it was the right option to take that kick for Ioane to score. Beautifully executed kick, great try, almost kicked the conversion, hit the post, didn't happen. We've also had an email this week from Kerry Geertsen, and please email us at aotearoa@sky.co.nz about New Zealand's goal-kicking percentages. So, it looks like the goal-kicking percentages in New Zealand are not tremendously high. So Damien McKenzie is the best out of all kickers in the comp for New Zealanders, who've kicked more than 10 goals of 75%. Tom Liner's at 100% over at the Reds. Ben Donaldson's at 85%. But we seem to be struggling for really world-class 80% plus goal kickers. Why is this happening? Well, one reason this could be happening, and this goes towards Jeff's point, is that all of these tries are being scored on the edges. 55% of tries scored within Super Rugby are being scored when the 15-metre line's on the outside, not in the 40 metres in the middle. If you kick in the 40 metres in the middle, 91% of your conversions go over. If you're kicking in the outsides, you can drop that way down. Left-hand channel to 60%, right-hand channel to 31%. Should New Zealand teams be thinking about whether or not it's effective to score tries down those tram lines, or should they be thinking more about getting scores in the middle, creating space there so they can convert those points and, in the case of the Blues, turn a 1-point loss into a 1-point victory?
It's a long bow. I think the way I would look at it is 5 points is better than 2, and I think the defence gives you the answer as to what you should do. So I think you've got to take the try when it's on offer, if you can find that space on the edge and you score the try, because so often when you're a little bit stubborn, and those close quarter contacts, and if you use the Blues, for example, I was caught in 2 ways. I was like, I hope we score by the post so the conversion is easy. But, we've seen that ball be turned over a lot. When the game's in the balance, referees really watch that ceiling. So there is a cost benefit to actually even getting the try when you keep it in that tight, area of that midfield. And I think teams always think about it, because if the person on the edge can, they'll always try and run round to get it as close as possible. But I think if you start cluttering mind around where we should score, probably doesn't allow you the ability to actually score in the first place. That's my personal take, because there's so much going on, so many moving parts. I think that would clutter decision making.
And as a backs, sometimes I get frustrated when I'm a 9. And you've seen all this space on the edge, but you're trying to obviously pick and go to be able to score points. And, the forwards want to be able to assert their dominance and score close to the line. But, you just got to go where the space is. When you start thinking about trying to score tries and just being able to, overplay your hand when there's no space there, you've got 3 guys in front of you, you've got one person that can cover one person that's covering a 50 metres or 30 metres. You want to go where the space is. So, I think it is... In terms of, it is a lot more difficult when you do the goal kicks from the sideline. I think any time that you're playing, you do score a try and you get the opportunity to be able to go inside and try to make the kick a little bit easier, you try to do that. But for me personally, I'm just going where the space is. And as a back, sometimes you want to be able to get the ball when you see the picture that you see. And if you start trying to pick and go to be able to score a try, to try and make the try close to the post, and you get the ref involved, whether it's a ceiling or it's a breakdown turnover, especially good jacklers like a McWright or Duplessis Kirifi'a, you give them ample opportunities to try and make a big play, and you're able to not score to 5 or 7 points, and you come away with nothing in terms of being in the 22 and not being efficient in there.
to talk about those stats specifically, though, because when the left-hand side is 61% and then the right-hand side is, what is it,
31%, yeah.
Yeah, 31%. For the viewers to understand why that may be, is left-hand side, most of our kickers are right-footed, so they like to curl it in and they have a better accuracy in that. They're much more comfortable. When you're on the right-hand side, trying to curl it in from the inside to out is definitely a lot more challenging. And I suppose that is very evident there, that we pretty much are right-foot heavy in terms of our conversions, and that side is extremely difficult. And you see, like the leagueies, I think if you use Thurston as an example, he'd do that big banana one from the left-hand side, but then he'd hit that straight one. It's a little bit like your golf game. Like if you're good enough, you can adjust, I suppose, your ability and style. Not my golf. Those stats are like my golf game.
Maybe
Malcolm Marx's stats would be much better than that. But just to understand the stats as to why it's such a drop-off.
Yeah.
And I probably should let Bryn kick goals. Mind you, I'm 100% in my rugby career, so maybe I'm...
Is that one from one or two?
I was on the left-hand side too.
All right.
Thank God for that. But yeah, it does. Look, I think it's a thing to consider and to be aware of, and the closer you can get it, the more accurate you'd be. But I think you'd miss a lot of tries if you went on that theory.
Interestingly, if you look up north at the kicking percentages up there, you'll see that Marcus Smith heading into the Six Nations was 27 from 28 in the Premiership. Prendergast in the URC, 90%. Ben Thomas from Wales, 85%. Ramos, we know, can kick goals from anywhere. You know, he's in the 80s and in the 90s in the Six Nations. Is that they're better goal kickers, or do you think that's the way that's where points are being scored, and so we're not putting our goal kickers in a position whereby they can be at that elite level necessarily because of the way we're scoring out wide? Yeah,
and I just think it's a mindset to penalties. So a lot of those will be penalties, and a lot of them are in that in between the 15s, up to the 40, maybe the halfway. Now the way guys kick is pretty much a given for them that they'll get that, and they have the mindset of taking those threes. I think you'll look at every team across Super Rugby, not just New Zealand teams, are going for the corner and turning down very kickable threes. Now, does that balance need to change a little bit going into finals? I think you'll see it naturally will change, because these games are just going to get down to finer margins, and taking points when on offer is probably going to become very valuable. And at 91% in that region, you'd think, you know, it doesn't matter how you win. It doesn't mean you have to score 10 tries. Yeah.
As speaking of low margins and kicking those points when you need to, let's get on to the Highlanders. We saw a penalty miss. We saw a drop goal miss, admittedly a tough one, and Gilbert is a pretty good kicker at 74%. Brenna, but they had 90% of possession in the last 10 minutes. They had all the territory. Why couldn't the Highlanders break down or get through and get the try that they needed? What was going wrong there?
Well, I wouldn't say anything was going wrong. I just think the defence that the defensive pressure that the Hurricanes were able to tackle at was tremendous. Like, I think both in that their last 10 minutes, they had to defend 25 phases to be able to defend that. To defend that firstly, and then another long passage of play, 18 to 20 phases, and then that last stanza, they had to be able to defend for multiple phases as well. And so I think the defensive discipline to be able to stay in their structure and back their defensive system, I think, was what probably led the Hurricanes to get that win. And, you know, the Duplessis Kirifi was big in and around that, getting a turnover steal within that 10 minutes. And I think the breakdown steals the Hurricanes had on the weekend was 9-3. You know, that's a massive number to be able to try and get those steals in the game. So I think the Highlanders in that kind of stanza, they were actually be able to hold on the ball. I think throughout the duration of their match, they were probably, execution skill set wise, probably wasn't where they needed to be, making a lot of unforced errors, and actually weren't able to build pressure with the amount of times that they were able to enter into the 22. They were double what the Hurricanes were, so they weren't able to score points there. But in that last 10 minutes, their attack to be able to go multiple phases, probably at the best of that whole game. But just to come back, I think the reason why the Hurricanes won that is because the defensive discipline and the execution of the tackle and being able to be patient and not give away penalties, even though Umaga Jensen probably, if you look back at it, was probably a penalty, but that's rugby sometimes, and they got away with it. But they showed a lot of care, and they were desperate in terms of their defensive pitches and the way they were able to tackle. It was actually really good to see, and what led to that result, I thought, on their last 10 minutes.
They made a critical shift around their breakdown. So against Moana Pacifica, they were 0 breakdown steals. Against the Blues, I don't know if you remember it, well, you probably do, the yellow card of Numia where he hit the cleaner, and we spoke about it. If you go back and watch the tape of the Highlanders, Peter Umaga Jensen was the best at it, of getting past the tackled player and just checking the Highlanders cleaner, which gave easy, clear access. To go from 0 to 9, I think that is the massive reason why they won this game, because they were just backs against the wall. Again, their discipline in the first half, another yellow card, like they put themselves under pressure, but their grit and focus in and around the breakdown and the work of the guys of like Umaga Jensen, even that inside defender not always, I suppose, going for the hunt. They almost pushed through and checked as well, and then it was like they had a couple of license, like Lakai and Duplessis Kirifi had the license to hover and around and get those turnovers, but it was a ploy and it worked. And it was a way for them to get their dominance back defensively, because again, the Blues and the Hurricanes were the most efficient teams defensively last year because of their work around the breakdown and their ability to buy time to get line speed. Hurricanes were able to do that and execute it within the laws, so they weren't pinged off the park. And when the game was on the line, they stuck to it. They'd done it all the game, and credit to the ref, he refed it how he had all game, so it didn't change just because the game was on the line. And that work and that, I suppose, focus around that breakdown, I believe was the reason they won that game.
Duplessis Kirifi has been a massive talking point over the last couple of weeks. Like, the drums are beating for Duplessis Kirifi as far as that All Black 7 jersey is concerned. So why don't we get a little bit into him and break down how he sits in comparison to the other contenders for that 7 jersey, the kind of game he plays, in kind of comparison to the way that's played in Test football, who you would put around him to make him work for the All Blacks. Let's get into all of those things in some detail, because I feel like it'd be really good to understand exactly what this is. Let's start with Kirifi, because, like you say, turnovers, carries, he's everywhere, he's into everything.
His ball carry has probably been the biggest statement, I believe. Like, he is running over the top of players, and he's always sort of been put in this, needs to be a bit taller. But, like, even if you look at the line out now, very rarely you see a full line out. Do you know what I mean? So the 7's already dropping, or they're at that +1 if it's a 6-man lighter. So they don't really impact as much as what previously we've seen of 7's needed to function in that line out. His order of arrivals on attack, 41 rucks on the weekend. And, when we spoke about Sam Cane, his game really allows Artie to do his game, and it's very similar numbers in terms of his ability to clean those rucks and, get that front foot ball, so guys like Peter Lakai and that can carry. When he has to carry, he had the most tackle busts, he had a line break, he's got the highest dominance statistically in terms of every carry he takes, he dominates. He set up the match-winning try, his ability to catch square hips, pop out the back. I think it was Harry Godfrey against the Drua. You watch, I think we highlighted it, so they've already probably seen it, but again, that skill set, the ability to give tip pass, the interplay, like every aspect, he tackled 24 out of 26, 92%. Obviously the breakdown turnovers, and I think that's been consistent across the comp. Obviously, statistically, the only other sort of player that challenges them in those numbers across the board is Artie. But I think when you put them to, I don't think what he's showing is there's no reason why that can't work at the next level. And he's just playing the house down. I think Sean Withy's a smoky. Again, when you looked at the numbers from the weekend, he's had 20, I suppose, catch involvements, 12 carries, 41 rucks as well, a breakdown steal, 21 out of 21, 100% tackle rate, a tackle bust. He's quite a big, bolshy customer that can play 6, 7, 8. So I think the one fortunate thing is a lot of the loose forwards are playing extremely well, and it'll be the balance of those players when it comes to All Black selection of who can play multiple positions, I think, and who can fit the bench and so forth.
Now, we've had lots of emails about Duplessis Kirifi. One from Dave in Ohopi, which Basically questioned, I suppose, his size at test level. Brenna, when you look at the size of the loose forwards across the board at test level, and you've got a guy who's only 5'11", although he's he's cut out of stone, Duplessis Kirifi, like there was a picture of him on the weekend.
Oh, he's a rock.
He's a specimen. Is that a big deal, the fact that maybe he's not a huge bloke, and if you had both him and Artie, you've got two not huge blokes in comparison to the size of the box or the size of the French?
You've got Peter Larko, who probably fits their mould in terms of being able to be a little bit better when it comes to line-out ball, in terms of number 7, and possibly Dalton Papali'i as well. But you can work your way in and around that, whether it be 4-man, 5-man, 6+1s, whatever it may be. You can be able to try and work around Dupes if he does start at 7 with other guys in 6 and 8 that are line-out options. So I think that's a question you've got to ask to the All Blacks. Do they want to be able to have a type of 7 that they see that is different to Duplessis Kirifi, or do you be able to reward him and give the opportunity with the stats that we've touched on, some really big stats in terms of what you want from your loose forward trios, especially around gain line carry, which I think you need at international level, that he's doing tremendously well, and his breakdown work, whether be able to slow down the ball and get steals in crucial moments, and just in general, it's a big positive, and I think you need that at the international level. So for me, on form, you've got to give him an opportunity and have a look.
It also excites me in the sense of him coming off the bench and doing 20, 25 minutes like a Quokka Smith. And, he's not but like, he dominates collisions, just as Quokka does at that level. Like, there's no ruck that's left. You don't need another cleaner when Kirifi cleans a ruck. You don't need another tackler when he makes a tackle. You don't need too many cleaners when he makes a carry. So if we're looking at the international game, those are the areas you want to know that he can dominate. And I think we know he can, but could he be even a bigger X factor of having that impact? If the guys that are starting can all play various positions, you can actually hold a genuine 7 on the bench and put them out there and play that sort of pocket rocket power. I can see Bryn screwing his face up. He doesn't agree, but I think it could be a role. I definitely think it could be a role that you could see him play. With the current coaching group, I'm not sure. But if he keeps playing, they've called him into the All Blacks at the end of the tour. He was captain of All Blacks 15. There's no reason for us to think he's not on the radar with that and the way he performed. And I think he's done it for 3 years, is the other thing. Like, so often, like the best All Blacks normally make it after 3 or 4 years of, real high quality, because they're ready for that jump and they're hungry and they want it. And there's no doubt he's turned down offers. He wants that All Black jersey. He's staying around for it. And, I suppose all he can control is his currency, is his performance, and keep going, and no doubt he'll get a shot.
Artie has to start. We've seen England operate 2 fetchers. We've seen Australia operate 2 fetchers over the years with some success. Can you have Artie and Duplessis on the field at the same time, or do you have to have one of them coming off the bench?
I think for me, and what we've probably shown and what we've selected, I think one of them has to be on the bench. And the only reason I screwed my face up a little bit, Jip, is because with Quagga, he's able to cover multiple positions. And what we've seen probably on the bench with the All Blacks, that number 20 role has had to be able to cover multiple positions, whether it was 6, 7 or 8. And so if we're, from the chat there we're having, we've seen Duplessis as an out-and-out 7, then you probably don't carry him on the bench. You're either starting him.
Well, you can if there's 6, 7, 8 that can play 6, 7, 8. If the starting team.
But you also got Vai and Barrett who can slot into 6, I suppose, which could help you with that situation.
Yeah, I think if the starting team can move more than the current Springboks, so it's not a like for like, but I'm just saying he's a pocket rocket that against tiring defence at the international level, his intensity, gosh, you just need to look at his eyes. My God, his intensity, he's ready. I think he's ready. But I've been on this train for a number of years. I think he's quality. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, but I do think you can play it if you have like a say, I don't know, I'm just trying to a Jacobson, Artie, and a Dalton at 7, just for argument's sakes. I think those 3 can cover all those other positions, and a Kirifi can be held on the bench, or even if it's a Lakai, Artie, Samba Penny-Finau, whoever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, they can still play those roles. Well, I mean, the one thing Quagga gives is he can play in the backs as well. I don't think we'd expect that of Kirifi.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that would have to be thought about in terms of with the All Black selectors, because I think with what we've seen in the past, and probably like you said, Duplessis is playing great, so you've got to be able to try and tinker, right? If you're going to pick him in the way that he's playing, of having those conversations around if he is an out-and-out 7 and then you're putting him in that number 20 role, the flexibility of what you have from your 6, 7, 8 and starter and being able to cover multiple roles opens up the door for a guy like Kirifi, or you start him as well and you play some other guys off the bench.
And I'm just thinking, like, I'm trying to think back, like, what the selectors have said, like, when they've spoken about why they chose Wallace Satiti, both sides of the ball. He has a big impact both sides of the ball. Like, on the weekend, Kirifi, 14 carries or touches, 24 tackles out of 26, 41 rucks. Like, he is having an impact both sides of the ball, breakdown steals. So from... You've got to think they're seeing that and going, yeah, man, he is all out effort. Like, his lung capacity must be huge. He is just roaring through work.
Now, of course, big impact from Artie since arriving at Moana Pacifica, and there's been another player who's made a big impact since arriving at Moana Pacifica. That's Solomon Alaimalo, the former Highlanders, the former Chiefs winger, fullback, looking really good. Went to the NRL last year, played a little bit for West Tigers, and we caught up with him about the transition back to rugby, and also what his wingmate, Kairanta Moifalau, is doing, ripping up Super Rugby at the moment. What's it been like transitioning back into the code?
Been a breath of fresh air, and I'm enjoying it like big time. It was across the ditch was a bit different, and just transitioning pretty smoothly, bro. I'm happy with how I'm tracking. So,
man, what's it like playing NRL?
It's pretty fast, obviously. Like, the game's pretty fast. It is tough. They obviously have a long season and like not many breaks, but built like a resilience that I probably, kind of sort of lacked before. And just really enjoyed it, bro.
Did it help your game in terms of a skill set point of view? What sort of growth areas did it help with that?
As an outside back, like small things like swinging into space, like, because their attack shapes are a lot different to ours. We like to sort of, attack weak shoulders. They like to sort of, swing into the space, taking the outside space and creating it in that way. But and obviously, like the high ball and stuff, like they've got some athletes over there as well, and they're real big on one-on-one contests.
That swinging, if we look at rugby, that could be a weapon though for you to bring back.
Yeah,
because it comes from that sort of blind.
Yeah, that
as
blind
a defender.
Spot, yeah, 100%. I've sort of been doing it naturally at training at the moment because I just sort of stuck in that sort of way. But I definitely sort of see it like how you're saying, where it's been a weapon that we've sort of been able to do, especially like just swinging into the space and you've got tight forwards around the ruck and that, and being able to utilise that. But as well as that, with the new laws and stuff too, like the high ball is pretty crucial as well. So we've been able to sort of take bits from the league as well and sort of apply it to training and stuff too.
So it's mostly the high cross kicks and things that you're training in league? Yeah,
mostly, and obviously like diffusing them as well is big, because theirs is like, if you can't diffuse it on the line, it's a try to the other team. So over the head's pretty important as well, but I felt like diffusing was probably a strength of mine, and I feel like that's sort of come from rugby union.
With the new union rules that we're seeing where there's no blockers and they're all being taken out of the play, that could be a major strength for you. Yeah,
100%. I think we've sort of had a chat around, like our outside group and stuff, and sort of being able to utilise that as a weapon. We've got some awesome young boys like Tuna and Kyron Moifalau. He's got hops for days, and just being able to utilise that into our arsenal, and like you said, the blockers and them allowing the contest to happen, that's pretty exciting.
So what is the key to diffusing it, without giving away all your secrets?
It's pretty simple. You watch guys like Will Jordan and that, they win the air. They like to attack the ball, as long as you're off the ground first, I guess. And I think that was a big sort of, talking point. Was if you're first off the ground, the guy that's sort of left the guy that's left the ground second, he's got a duty of care for you. So just making sure you're confident in attacking the ball and just have eyes on the ball. What
about the pre-season? Quite different?
Yeah, very different. The League One was definitely. I think I went over 103. By the end of pre-season, I was 92. So I'd lost like 11 kgs.
Wow.
Just running. Yeah, it was different. Like I managed to put on maybe 6, like once season had come around, but the pre-season I just felt it was a lot of running and just obviously the heat. Like the heat over there is next level. I think I had a session on the Thursday, my first week over there, and I like collapsed. Like it was a 38-degree day, like by 11, and I think we're into our 3rd block, and I just collapsed. And took me. So,
wow.
So it was pretty brutal, but.
Are you 92 or 103 kgs at the moment?
Off 101 at the moment.
I don't know how you could be 92. Like there's just nothing to you.
Yeah, it was. I look at the photos, and I'm like, it was so bad.
What are your goals now you're back?
Sort of want to represent, see Samoa and stuff. Good season for Moana and being able to, I guess, put my best foot forward for them and repay Tana and stuff, and just being able to, I guess, mentor like the younger fellas in our group as well.
Moana's a team that's building. Expansion franchises take time, unless you're the Melbourne Storm. It does take time to get there. They got to most wins they've ever had last year. Where are you seeing the builds this year? Like, where are you seeing them talking about what needs to be next?
I think one of the major shifts I've heard around the group is like just the professionalism has lifted a lot, and just the nick that the boys showed up in pre-season, and then this side of Christmas as well. So it's like I think we're obviously heading in the right direction and stuff, but like it's a results-driven business, so hopefully it translates onto the field.
Is there a young player in the squad that we could watch out for?
I reckon Kyron. Tomoi Filau, I reckon he's been training the house down, man. And he's an awesome kid too. I think he's always eager to learn. You always see him picking the senior players' heads and stuff. And
he can jump, huh?
Hops, yeah. He's got hops for days. He's always jumping too. I have to like pull him back. I'm like, mate, you're not going to be that
Save
young
it.
forever.
Save it. I remember Nick White always said to me, do as little live scrums as possible because it's one more you can do on the field. so I think you're passing on the same advice. Just save it for game day.
So he's saying there are 1,000 scrums in
He's
your life.
saying you've got a limit.
You can't go to 1,000.
That's what he's saying. You've got a limit and your body's going to say no eventually.
Yeah.
And he wasn't wrong.
So there's a World Cup coming up in a few months, and the selectors have said to you, let's say, if you're looking for Samoa, we can make it Samoa, you make it whoever you want it to be. There is a selection coming up. You can choose a current player, a former player, and a coach to take along the way with you. Who would you like to take?
My favourite player is Christian Cullen, is the man. Current player, can be anywhere in the world.
Anywhere.
Probably say Richie Moe. Coach, I'll go Tana.
Yeah.
Go Tana, yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
That's a good call. That's a good call. Did you play against Richie much down in Christchurch?
I'd played like age grades and stuff with him.
Yeah.
And he was going, I think we had our 10-15 for 18s was like, I think he was 15 and we had Damo at 10. So it was
Jeez, that's
pretty,
a hell of a-
it was
Unreal.
to watch, and play outside. So
That's a schoolboy team and a half.
yeah, frick, it was a pretty good 18s team.
Watch out. Well, thank you very much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it. All the best for the season.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.
Alaimalo looking forward to playing for Samoa. Let's have a look at more international footy, though. The Six Nations on the weekend. We saw France wrap it up with a pretty impressive win again. There's a lot going on there for France. Where have you seen the big evolution in their game?
Well, I actually think the depth of the squad saved them a little bit because they gave Scotland every opportunity in that first 40 and, Scotland weren't able to make the most of it in terms of their discipline, but by about the 60-minute, I think from 50 minutes onwards, the French just dominated. And I suppose a lot of the impact from the bench, really, I suppose, brought it home with a wet sail. And the reason why I like that, and it's exciting, is because there's so much talk about this French squad coming down here. I actually think they've got a lot of depth and a lot of exciting players and a lot of experience still to come down here. That they will still be a top quality side. But the one thing I liked is how they took advantage, both sides actually. Scotland scored one as well, but at the yellow cards, so often you see teams, when they get a yellow card, you try to go to the edge quickly because you just think that's where the numbers are, but because everyone knows you're a man down, a lot of people's hips are actually already facing towards the sideline because they're expecting to sort of get peeled on the edge. And I think French first try, you saw them cut back in towards the ruck and then linked up and scored. And the Scots were the same. They gave an inside ball when the French had a yellow card and they scored. And I thought it was very interesting for our viewers to sort of see that manipulating a yellow card actually is probably better sometimes to just go through the middle and pick them off because of that perception of being burnt on the outside. But all in all, Six Nation was amazing. Like even Italy pushing Ireland on the weekend. England, I think, are back and they've made a big statement. I think the Welsh have improved. They've definitely, obviously not on the weekend, but they've made improvement in key areas. So I think it sets up the July window once they're all refreshed and coming off their break to rock and roll for us.
Yeah, just to touch on those French players, I think they said that it was the finalists in the top 14 final who won't be coming down. Now, at the moment, you've got Toulouse and Toulon at the top. Toulouse have got 13 players in that French squad, and I think Toulon have got 3. So you're looking at 16 players who might be out
it's a hefty. It is a hefty.
Yeah.
But I do think I think they've looked a little bit at South Africa and they're giving a lot of guys a lot of opportunity throughout the year. So it's not like there's going to be like 20 debutants or anything like that. There's guys that have had minutes in international rugby. And I think, remember when the English or the Great Britain netball side came over and it was talked about and they won the first game against the Silver Ferns? I think it's very important that we don't fall into this lull of just expecting our side to run over the top of them. It will still be a good French side.
I'm waiting for some netball
it stuck with me because I remember watching the news that week and it was like, it's a bit disappointing they've sent this side, and the fixation was on the poor side, and then we lost that first game and I was like, make sure in our rugby lane we just stay fixated on making sure that we turn up.
A quick look at the tipping ladder from the week. Wow. There's a few people out front on 19 points, including K-Fly, and if you win our tipping competition, of course, you'll get a spot on the show. Tell us what you think about it. You're looking pretty good. You've jumped up to 70th. You got some good wins. I think you got 5 from 5 on the weekend. Maybe it's being rigged.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the points.
Okay, let's get into our picks for the weekend in Super Rugby. A few really cool games coming up here. Moana Pacifica versus the Chiefs is the first one, and have a look at the QR code here on your screen. Go and chuck that into your phone and go buy a ticket if you want to head to the match. Brynner, how do you see this game playing out?
I see the Chiefs getting the job done there. I think even though Moana Pacifica had a fantastic result last game out, I just think the way that the Chiefs are battle hardened, and I guess getting back on the horse with beating the Blues, I think it'll just be a little bit too much for Moana Pacifica.
Chiefs 1-12 though. I think we've got to credit Moana Pacifica. Actually, if they play the same mindset as other teams of expecting points and playing too much in their own half, they fall into the same trap, but I'm sure they won't. But I think it will be Chiefs 1-12.
Highlanders, Reds.
Yep. Highlanders.
Highlanders?
Yep. I just felt like the Reds didn't travel that well to Christchurch, I just think the Highlanders did enough to win that game. There's still a lot to like in their game, so I'll be jumping on the Kiwi bandwagon there.
Yeah, I'll be going the Highlanders. I think their 22 entries, if they can just sharpen that up a little bit more and score some points from the entries, they'll be a little bit too much for the Reds.
Okay, Waratahs, Brumbies, Brynner?
Brumbies. Waratahs were bad on the weekend.
Yep. Yeah, Brumbies for me as well.
All right, Force versus the Drua?
Force.
I'm going to try to get back one of my picking here. I'm going to go to the Draw. They're going to get their first win away from Fiji this year.
And to the question I get to ask twice a year, at least, knowing exactly what both answers are going to be. Hit me, Blues Crusaders at Eden Park.
Blues home advantage.
Yeah.
I've spoken the Crusaders up. It's the same thing. I do think the Crusaders go in as favourites, but I don't need to rattle that story off again. I'm going to pick the Blues.
Okay, Brennan. Blues, 16 turnovers against the Chiefs. Crusaders, best team in the comp at turning turnovers into points. Are you Crusaders or are you Blues this weekend?
I'll be similar to Jip. I think I'll stick with my heart. I think the Crusaders. But look, I think it's going to be a lot different. They're going to get a lot more pressure in terms of breakdown collision area with the Blues, both attack and defence. And if they're not on the job, it'll be very, very difficult. And especially going up to Eden Park, it's difficult to play up there. But I'll pick the Crusaders in a tight tussle, actually, 1-12. It'll be very, very close, I think, this weekend.
There's a Freudian slip there.
I am beyond excited for this match. You can just see sensing a little bit of blue. Aren't we just fence sitters? Yeah.
It's going to be good. Brenna, mate, you got to head to training. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Cheers, man. See you guys later.
Right, that brings us to the end of the show. Of course, plenty of great rugby coming up this weekend between Super Rugby Opiki and Super Rugby Pacific. Thank you very much for joining us once again. Thanks so much to Ashley and Martin as well, our major sponsors, Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Thanks for your support. Thank you to everyone who emails in, and thank you to everyone who helps the show come together. We'll catch you again next week. Mā te wā.